family moved into a new house in a small town, hoping for a fresh start. But as soon as they arrived, strange things started happening. The family heard whispers and footsteps in the middle of the night, and objects moved on their own. They tried to ignore it at first, but the activity only got worse. One night, the family woke up to find that all of their furniture had been rearranged in a sinister pattern. They started to research the history of the house and the town, and they discovered that there had been several murders in the area over the years. As they dug deeper, they realized that the previous owners of their house were involved in some of these murders. The family started to fear for their lives as they realized that they were not alone in the house. They heard voices and saw shadows moving in the corners of their eyes. They soon realized that the ghosts of the previous owners were haunting them, and they wouldn't stop until they got revenge. The family tried to leave the house, but every time they tried to escape, they found themselves back inside. The ghosts were trapping them in the house, and there seemed to be no way out. One day, while researching the history of the town, the family stumbled upon an old abandoned house in the woods. The decaying house had been glorious in its heyday, but now it was just a shell of its former self. The family decided to investigate. As they entered the abandoned house, they felt a chill run down their spines. The air was thick with an eerie silence. Suddenly, they heard footsteps coming from upstairs. They slowly made their way up the stairs, and as they reached the top, they saw a figure standing at the end of the hallway. The figure turned around slowly, revealing itself to be one of the ghosts haunting their house. The ghost beckoned them forward, and as they approached, it disappeared into thin air. The family realized that the ghosts were not just haunting their house, they were haunting the entire town. They had to find a way to put an end to it before it was too late. They discovered that there was a curse on the town that had been placed by a group of witches many years ago. The only way to break the curse was to find and destroy all of their artifacts. The family set out on a mission to find all of the artifacts and put an end to the curse once and for all. As they destroyed each artifact, they felt a weight lifted off their shoulders. Finally, after destroying all of the artifacts, the ghosts disappeared from their house and from the town. The family could finally leave their haunted house behind and start anew. The family continued their search for a way to break the curse on the town. They discovered that the artifacts were not the only things that needed to be destroyed. There was a group of witches who had placed the curse on the town, and they needed to be stopped. The family found out that the witches were living in an old abandoned house in the woods. The house had been glorious in its heyday, but now it was just a shell of its former self. The family decided to investigate. As they entered the abandoned house, they felt a chill run down their spines. The air was thick with an eerie silence. Suddenly, they heard footsteps coming from upstairs. They slowly made their way up the stairs, and as they reached the top, they saw a figure standing at the end of the hallway. The figure turned around slowly, revealing itself to be one of the witches who had placed the curse on the town. The witch beckoned them forward, and as they approached, it disappeared into thin air. The family realized that they were dealing with powerful forces beyond their understanding. They knew that they needed help if they were going to break the curse and save their town. They reached out to a group of paranormal investigators who had experience dealing with similar situations. The investigators agreed to help them, and together they set out to put an end to the curse once and for all. After several exorcisms and intense rituals, the group finally managed to break the curse on the town. The ghosts disappeared from their house and from the town, and the witches were banished forever. The family could finally leave their haunted house behind and start anew. They felt a sense of relief knowing that their town was no longer haunted by dark forces. They knew that they had saved their town from a fate worse than death. As they drove away from their old house, they couldn't help but feel a sense of sadness for all of the families who had lived there before them. They knew that their old house would continue to lure teens with its legends and lore, but they hoped that no one would ever have to experience what they'd gone through. Emily had always been fascinated by the old ancestral trees that surrounded her home. She felt a sense of belonging among them, as if they were her protectors. But after the events that had transpired in her town, she couldn't help but feel a sense of unease whenever she looked at them. She knew that the witches who had placed the curse on her town were still out there somewhere. Esperanza, too, had felt a sense of unease in her own home. She had never wanted to come from Mango Street, and after the death of Lucy and Rachel's baby sister, she felt even more disconnected from her home. The old aunts who had come to view the baby before it was buried had seemed magical to her, but they couldn't protect her from the guilt she felt for leaving her home behind. The Munoz family had also felt a sense of unease in their new home. They knew that it was an unusual house, and strange things had been happening since they moved in. Things would disappear without explanation, and they would hear noises coming from the addition on the north side of the house. The townspeople in the Scarlet Letter had also felt a sense of unease towards Chillingworth. At first, they were thrilled with his appearance, but as time went on, they began to suspect that he was not who he seemed to be. All of these characters were searching for a sense of belonging and protection in their homes, but they couldn't escape the feeling that something was not quite right. They were all haunted by their pasts and by the dark forces that lurked just beyond their doors. As Emily looked out at the old ancestral trees one day, she realized that they were not just protectors, they were also witnesses. They had seen everything that had happened in her town, and they would continue to see everything that happened in the future. But Emily refused to let the witches and their curse control her town any longer. She rallied the townspeople together and led them on a mission to destroy all of the artifacts and banish the witches forever. After the curse was broken, Emily looked out at the old ancestral trees once again. This time she felt a sense of peace and belonging among them. She knew that they would continue to protect her town for generations to come.